Good morning and welcome to this session of Business Breeders, a live webinar series hosted by Goodman Group at Brock University. My name is Abdul Rahimi and it's my distinct pleasure to serve as the director of Goodman Group at Brock University. Goodman Group is a community-focused learning and development services provider that works to support professionals, businesses, and entrepreneurs pursuing growth through professional development certificates, programs, executive education, consulting services, and startup support. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's session as you take your break with us. This webinar series aims to provide 45-minute breathers filled with insightful discussions on timely topics that are relevant to businesses and everyday lives. These sessions are led by award-winning Brock University faculty and leading industry experts. They're all encouraging thoughtful debates and keeping us feeling connected all together. The webinar series is hosted on Wednesdays from 11 to 11:45. Momentarily, I'll hand the screen over to Dr. Barry Wright, who will be leading today's discussions, but we'll just pause and go through the format for those who may be joining us for the first time. Barry will speak for approximately 30 minutes, and then we'll spend some time answering your questions. Some of you have already posed your questions at the time of registration, so thank you very much for all of you who have done that. You may also pose your question on the chat feature, which is live and open now. And you may also tweet your questions and comments at GSB Goodman Group. That's at GSB Goodman Group, all one word. Okay, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you today's webinar lead. Dr. Barry Wright is the CEO of the 2022 Canada Summer Games and is an associate professor in the Goodman School of Business at Brock University. Dr. Wright's research centers primarily on change and its influence on organizational members. With a PhD in management and a master's in psychology of sport from Queen's, Barry has provided consultation to a number of organizations, including Sobeys, Bank of Montreal, PricewaterhouseCoopers, the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and currently serves on the board of the Niagara Health System. Dr. Wright has won numerous teaching and research awards and is an active member of the Niagara community. Barry, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you much, Abdul. It is my pleasure to be joining you today. I'm very excited about being able to talk something that's very important in the world these days, is about teamwork. Thank you for inviting me, and big shout out as well to Cassie Price for her help in getting us together. It truly was teamwork that got us to where we're at today. So let's get started. Let's talk a little bit, a couple of quotes that I wanted to get going with you. First off, sticks in a bundle are hard to break. And getting good players is easy. Getting them to play together is the hard part. And I picked these two sayings because they both have that word hard in there. And I think we can all appreciate that are with us today that playing together will take lots of skills to do it, but it's going to be hard in order for us to be successful. So as we move into this, I often start my seminars and sessions talking with a little story about a good colleague of mine by the name of Hart Cantillon. And when I was walking through the halls of Queen's University doing my master's, I remember the very first time Hart was there, and I walked by Hart, and Hart said, "Hi Barry, who are you now?" And I thought he said, "How are you now?" So I said, "Oh, I'm fine actually, great. I'm settling into Kingston. Things are great. So really happy to be here." And he just smiled and walked on. Saw him the next day, Hart walking through the hallways, and Hart said to me again, "Hey Barry, who are you now?" This time, it was the second time he said it, and I was a little confused by that, and I wasn't sure what to say, so I just kind of walked by a little bit scratching my head. So the third time I heard Hart do it, when we were co-teaching a class, and he looked out into the class, and he said, "Class, who are you now?" And they all looked back at him kind of in a blank stare, just like I looked back at Hart. But at the end of the class, then Hart said, "Who are you now?" And at that point, he said, "If you're the same individual you were at the start of the class, then one of two things happened. One, I didn't create an environment for good learning to take place, or two, you're too lazy to learn." So I know everybody that's on this call today is not, you're here because you want to learn, you want to grab some good ideas, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that we get some good ideas shared your way. So I'm going to change with Abdul's permission a little, rather than a business breather, it's going to be a business stimulator today. So we're going to try and stimulate some ideas with you. So your objectives today, well, to be able to find 3 team lessons learned. All right, all of you are starting in a great spot. Let's find something that will help you grow into becoming a better team leader. So let's get started. The first question I want to lead with a little bit is, do I need a team? Is there opportunities where individuals are better than working at teams? So this research goes a long way back. Actually, goes back to Maximilian Ringelmann, 1913, as a matter of fact. He started talking about this, and so it's often known as the Ringelmann rope trick. What he had is he had individuals pull on a rope, and as they pulled on a rope, he measured how many pounds pressure, if you will, they could measure. And so if on the screen you can see one person roughly was around 100. But as he added the second person, then they went to 2. But as you can see, the third person, as they started arriving, the numbers started to drop off, and it became more drastic as they got into 6, 7, and 8. So in fact, the potential of 100 pounds per pressure for individual was not the actual once they started working as a team. And so that was one of the challenges as we came into that, is trying to figure out exactly what happened. Why didn't that work? Well, this long research topic led a rise to the whole concept of a free rider. And that free rider concept is something that you probably experienced in teams that you've been involved in as well, where some individuals seem to be doing a lot of the work and some are not doing a whole bunch of the work. So for example, here's the Every Group project that probably shivers down your spine. Yes, you're the individual that's been doing 99% of the work, and then you got teammates that have no idea what's going on, and some says he's going to help but never does kind of come through in the end, and then somebody disappears at the beginning and you only see him at the end. So I'm sure you've all had your kind of teamwork Hollywood hangover, if you will, as we move forward. So I'm going to throw some pitches at you. I'm going to use a lot of sports analogies. So today, as an analogy, you're sitting in the getting ready. I'm a pitcher throwing fastballs and curves at you. You're in the batter's box a little bit, trying to warm up for the big game. As again, 3 pitches going to come your way. Make sure you're hanging on to those to be able to help develop your skill as you move forward. So the question is, do I need a team? And the answer is, it really does depend. And there's a lot of things that you're going to have to sort through that out. But here's some key things that we found that teams, if we follow through them, do really work well for us. So the synergy of a team, coming together allows us to increase our performance. Problem solving. What we find when you have many lines of sight on a problem, you're likely come up with a better solution. More creativity, more innovation, better decision making, because people start saying, well, what about, and as a result, we can go through, we won't have as many failed steps. Again, we can get commitment to our task. We're all part of the team working towards those things. People tend to be more motivated as they're working on a team, and you'll find that satisfaction does go up within an organization through teamwork as well. So, setting the stage, imagine it's time for a new task force and get it up and running, and you're either the leader or a teammate. So that's our backdrop today. So if you're looking at drawing from either Ron Burgundy or Michael Scott as your teamwork gurus, rather than finding 3 things to focus on, you may want to focus on 4 to be able to go. So here's the big picture as we move forward. So I want to talk a little bit about this open system for team effectiveness. So you really have these inputs, you have the throughputs and the outputs. In many respects, I'm going to use a lot of sports analogies today. Remember Niagara 2022 with our Canada Summer Games. So it's all about sport for me these days. So at the input, that's the start. You're going to be at the start of the race, and you're getting ready to be able to go, and it's all the pieces of the puzzle there to make sure that you're ready for the start. Then once the gun has gone off, then it's the throughputs. What are all the processes that you need to do in order to be successful? So if you're a sailor, you're at the starting line, it's out, which way is the wind blowing, how are you going to tack, what are you going to do as you move forward throughout the race? And then obviously at the last, the output, team effectiveness, when you cross the finish line, did you achieve the goals that you're after? So we're going to be looking at that. You could say it's the same. If it's a soccer game, it's exactly the same. How are you going to bring your 11 players together plus substitutes? How are you going to manage the game? What's your game plan through it? And at the end of the game, hopefully you've scored a few more goals than they have as you move forward. So let's look at each one of those 3 pieces as we move forward. So at the start, So when you're at the start line, these are the kind of things that you need to look at. I'm not going to be able to touch on all of them, but I will highlight a few of them. So let's start. The first one's in red, and I'll come back to the blue ones in a minute. But the first part is the people. The people that you've got with you on the teams as you're trying to gather all the right individuals together, as Casey Stengel talked about it on the first slide, bringing them together. I'd like to focus a little bit on the personality. There's many different ways that you can develop and understand people's personalities. There's a lot of tests that are out there that are going on. This one that I've got highlighted a little bit to the right, it comes from a colors work, true colors type metric, but could be DISC, could be Myers-Briggs, could be any of them that you could do. Often in psychology, it's kind of like a 2x2 little matrix that you'll look at that. So why I put this one in here is once you've had a good opportunity to kind of reflect on who your teammates might be, you should also understand who you are. So I know Abdul and Cassie with their program, they actually do a seminar on this, and I've sat through it, and it's actually quite brilliant. I've discovered that I traditionally am in that orange range. And what oranges need to understand is when you go across corner to it, over to the golds, this is where there's potential for some conflict as you go along. So golds tend to be very respecting rules and authority. They're responsible, they're organized. And us oranges over here, we like change, we like variety, we're adventurous, we're competitive, we're more impulsive. And so we don't always color in between the lines, where the golds want us to color in between the lines. So we can have some challenges across this way. Blue, on the other hand, was the same with the green. Blue is very emotionally driven, if you will, seeks harmony and enthusiastic. Green is very logical. We got the Spocks that are over here. Independent thinkers, focused, efficient. And so sometimes the emotion versus the analytics run into some challenges. Your teammates on either side, less so. So we have to understand these personalities as we move forward because are you looking for diversity? So a number of lines of sight, which works out really well for you, or are you looking, if you will, people of like minds so you can be able to run quickly in a certain area? I'll give you an example. When I left my teaching at St. FX, which was the first place I went as an academic, I had a really good friend there, Tom Mahaffey. Tom and I did a lot of work together, and as we were parting ways for, from that job at St. FX, Tom said, Barry, it was great working with you. I wouldn't have done half as much as I had without you. And I looked back at Tom and I said, Tom, without you, I'd have probably done twice as many projects, but only half as good. Tom was very much of a golden individual, and as I said, with an orange. So even though there might be some challenges with how we initially see the world, you can work really well together. You just have to understand where some of those problems might arrive. The second part that I want to go down here is to talk a little bit about rewards. And the rewards is an interesting place to be. You have to be careful if you're expecting team collective efforts, but you're starting to reward individual efforts. So for example, back at the example that we talked about, the Ringleman road trip, that was way back in 2013, or 1913 rather. And I went back and looked at baseball. It was the Philadelphia Athletics that actually won the World Series that year, and the top player was Home Run Baker, who batted .450. So you can appreciate, though, if you start focusing on more of your individual successes versus team successes, you can run into some real challenges. This happens a little bit in the World Cup of soccer. They all want to be able to touch the trophy, finally touch the trophy and raise it high. But some people can also win the Golden Boot, which means they score the most goals. So do you pass to your teammate who has a better chance of scoring, or because you're working on your individual goals, are you focused more on trying to score on your own? So be careful when you're putting those teams together on how you've structured the rewards. Third part here is this complexity. I think this is a really important on the task. Is there much clarity? Do you know exactly where you're going, and how complicated might it be? Well, our COVID world is very complicated these days, as you can appreciate. So depending on the task, as you can see, this comes from Henry Mintzberg from McGill University. If the world is predictable, you need smart people. If it's unpredictable, you need people who are willing to adapt. So be careful in what the task is. The last little point I want to talk about how you're putting the team together is how many people should you put on the team? As you can remember from the Ringleman rope trick, it's really started to drop after 4 or 5. Jeff Bezos, with Amazon CEO, he has a little message, and maybe I shouldn't show this close to lunchtime, but his message: if you need more than 2 pizzas to feed them at lunchtime, you have too many people on your team. So that kind of talks a little bit about the inputs. The last thing, when I go back to the blues, really understand then those abilities. You make sure that you have diverse perspectives in there, and understand how fast you need things to go. Because as the old adage goes, if you need to go quickly, in some respects go alone. If you need to go far, you're going to go together as a team. If you want to be a creative team, you better have lots of lines of sight on things. If you need to go quickly, and if it's a task force that needs to get things done in a week, you probably need to have people who are more like-minded as you're going to do that. So more creative, be diverse, more similar if you need to go with speed. Okay, next thing I want to talk about then is now this is the processes. This is the middle part. You've started the journey off and running. So you got your teammates together, they understand where they're going, and now you got to figure out how we're going to work well together. I want to talk a little bit about norms and cohesions here. We all have norms that we have within any organization. I can remember taking some international students to a hockey game here in Canada, and at the start of the game, you know, things are going, they do the warm-up, and things that we just pass us by, we don't really pick up. But all the teammates, they all skated towards the goaltender, and of course they all tapped them on the pads, and they went back to the bench. Well, the international student said, "Barry, why do they not like that person in pads?" And I'm going, "What do you mean? Why don't they like it?" I said, "Well, they all hit him with their sticks." And so you realize, yeah, what are the true norms around any team or organization? And you do need to develop those quickly in order to be successful. Over here a little bit on the 2x2, a good psychology again, low-high cohesiveness, low-high and performance norms. Often when you get into talking about bringing this team together, people say, well, let's make sure that we can have bonding. Let's show we're team bonding, focus on ourselves and get to know each other, and people start there. And if you look at that, if you go high cohesiveness but low performance, actually that's your lowest productivity area. Where you need to actually start is make sure you focus on your performance norms. What is it that we're after? How are we going to work well together? If you can do that, move from a low, even if it's not good at the start, you got moderate to low productivity. But if you can achieve that and get the high performance norms, you're going to be in a good productivity area. Then you have an opportunity to work on cohesiveness, work well together, develop those team chemistries and things, and that's where you're going to get into the high productivity. I've got personal stories about that. We're focused on the social first, didn't work as well. Focus on the performance norms, it works out well for us. Decision-making, team decision-making is a challenge because you're going to have many lines of sight, a lot of people, different ideas. Where you stand is going to determine your view. Have a read of De Bono's hats. If you think this might be a challenge for you, go back and look at De Bono. He's got 6 different hats that you would wear, and certain order you would bring the hats on that everybody would wear to help you through a decision-making process. We've used this at Niagara Health on some of our challenging times, and it has worked out well for us. The other thing I want to talk about this process here is conflict, and you do have to recognize that conflict will happen as you're going through. As long as it's not interpersonal conflict, which is rarely good, and if we're more talking about role or task conflict, then that's really good. And this inverted U hypothesis at the bottom is really where it works out. So it's kind of like it's the too cold, not enough conflict, the too hot, we got too much conflict, and the just right. So as a leader, if you're finding that everybody's in agreement, you know, yes, 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 everything's good, you may need to take a step back and create a little conflict and a little deeper dive into it. And that's what De Bono is really good about, because he'll have wearing a particular hat will bring a different perspective in. So you need to manage that. If it's way too much conflict, on the other hand, then you need to step it back, find areas of agreement, and then you'll be able to move that forward. So that's a bit of the process. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the stages of development in the process as we move forward as well for team effectiveness. But that brings us now focused on the finish line and our team accomplishments. And here's what you need to ask yourselves again at the start. What is our performance? Where are we going? And so the key message here, begin with the end in mind. And so you can see our paddlers all in the boat. They're out in the ocean. They're looking for land, right? And so they're all working well together on the team because they all have a similar mindset on where they like to go. So your team needs to have a dream, because as it states there, and that comes from Walt Disney, if you never had a dream, how can you have a dream come true? Right? And so really important, I'm going to speak on our next slide a little bit more about how we set those goals. But the other aspect, at the end of the day, when you've achieved your goals and you've crossed that finish line, you've done all the kind of things that you wanted to do, then talking a little bit about member satisfaction. And the other aspect of a team is then future viability. Do you want to work with those teammates again as you move forward on the next project you have? So member satisfaction is really, really key. Here's an interesting point though. Again, remember back to that 2x2 matrix on roles and focusing on task performance. Interesting study when they looked at orchestras. They went in before and they found, how did the orchestra feel beforehand, before they started? And sometimes there was a lot of tensions because who got to be first seat, you know, for violin or whatever. And so there's some tensions. But once they actually played the performance, they came ready to play and got through the things. Then when it was all over, when they were standing up and the cheers were coming, that's when the satisfaction came from a job well done. So we still need to, again, remember, focus on member satisfaction, but it comes through achieving our roles and achieving our goals and achieving our performance. And so just a big shout out to Niagara Symphony Orchestra. They do amazing work here in Niagara. So looking forward to getting our past COVID days so we can bring everybody together to celebrate there. So back to that vision though, this part has been a real growth for me as I move forward, to be able to pick up on a couple of key things. So I'm going to go back and talk about Henry Mintzberg, and then I'm going to talk about Chip and Dan Heath and some of the things that they've done. So when you are working on your vision and the goal of your organization or goal of the team as you're moving forward, you need to focus a lot on glimpses of possibilities and also on finding the feeling. So the first part, Henry Mintzberg, who's Canada's top guru on the whole strategic planning area, he talks about you need to project this image, this future image, and continually project that as we move forward. So I've been fortunate enough to work with organizations as we've gone through this journey, or come into organizations that have done a great job on the journey. So it was mentioned, Abdul mentioned that I sit on the board with Niagara Health. When we went through this, we spent a lot of time looking at this anticipatory principle. For us in Niagara Health, then, it's a healthier Niagara. And you sit down and say, okay, you're a hospital. What shouldn't you just think about when people come into your doors, what you might do? And no, we talk about it's that ongoing projection about a healthier Niagara. And this is ringing true for us right now with COVID coming in, and for many of you that have had an opportunity to go down to the Seymour Hanna to be able to get your shot, this is how Niagara Health is going beyond the doors of our hospitals and system, going in to make sure that we can be a part of building a healthy Niagara. And that principle, when it came time to saying, do we continue to commit resources to our community to be able to do it? And it was an easy one for us because that's our vision. Goodman School of Business as well. When we look at the wonderful things that are happening within Goodman, the vision that's there, if you will, the anticipatory principle, is a leading business school. And we've qualified that in a couple places by ensuring we're going to focus on experiential education and scholarly practices. So we're out in the community to doing things that make sure that we're a leading business school. The last one I want to talk about is here at Niagara 2022. And I came into and I inherited these, and I love these three. So I give a big shout out to the people that came up with this. But it is to inspire, to transform, and to unify. And this has been a powerful point for us, because what it's meant is we've gone out and to make sure we unify, we build the team, we transform, we create the stages in Niagara, and inspire, we invite the magic to happen. So Bill Fenwick, who's the lead of our volunteers that are going to help us out for the games, big shout out to him, and of course to Doug Hamilton, the chair of our board. And it's been fabulous working with both gentlemen as we move forward. The last one on this slide is Chip and Dan Heath, you know, really to find the feeling. This book came out, and I had some colleagues said, oh, we got to read this book and really help and change. I go, what could I possibly learn from two guys from Harvard? Then I read the book and I said, there's many things I can learn from these two gentlemen. The one, though, is find the feeling. They talk about, most people think that we analyze and think and then we change. Their message is, no, you need to see something, to feel something, and then you will change. So when you're going to be looking at your vision, make sure there's some sort of emotive side in there as well. So again, this inspire part for us at Niagara 2022 is paramount for us as we go through this horrible challenge that we had with COVID. We had to postpone our games from 21 to 2022, and that came with a whole bunch of challenges. But we've been inspired by people around us, and we continue we'll be able to inspire as well as we move forward. So when we looked at that big picture, it's all about the questions to ask at the start. I really like the way Richard Hackman has summed them up. So a great little slide to think about. What's the direction? that you're going to go that energize, orients, and engages team members? What's the structure? Have you got the right members, the right processes, the right norms in place? And then context. Have you got the right rewards, the right information, the right training for your people? And then the last part is the mindset. Is there a common identity and a common understanding of all of them? Are they all rowing to that island? Do they know exactly what the goal is? How are they putting it together? And he's got a wonderful book out there as well, Leading Teams, as we move forward. So my last little points that I want to talk on is the group development model. And this is a key one as well. It goes through this forming, storming, norming, and performing model. And this is when we get into this is, if you will, a Tuckman's model as we go forward on it. It's been a tried and true. It's been around for a little while. Key message I want you to be aware of, you may start off, let's say you've got 10 people that you're working in your team, or 7, and one person leaves or 2 people leave. You might have been at the norming phase. What you're going to have to find is you're going to have to go back to the forming and storming phase when you go through that process. All right, so it's a fluid environment. You really have to pay attention to this. The critical zone, and I can't express this enough, is the really critical zone between having an ineffective team and an effective team is what you do when you go through this storming, if you will, and norming phase. This is a powerful place to be. I'll talk a little bit more about it on a future slide, and of course have a whole seminar that's going to really expand on this whole process. One message that I put here right now that's really worked well in our programs to date, in particular with I have team work with all my courses, and in the past, a couple of students would come up very much like that hangover picture. Oh, 2 of us really work. I got 3 teammates, they haven't done anything, and now what do we want to do with it? Oh, it becomes my problem, how I'm going to solve it. So what I've done is said, okay, as you go through that, you guys come up with a contract on how you're going to work well together. This goes through the storming phase and gets them to the norming. So on any team, think about how we might put a contract together on how we're going to operate. And I found as soon as I did this, and big shout out to my my colleague Deb that came up with that, Deborah Hurst. It's solved all my problems from having to intervene with these teams. So think about how you might put a contract together for your team. But in talking about that, I'm going to go back to Henry Mintzberg on this one. As much as I'm going to go through this and I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to throw some ideas at you, and I want you to go out and read and develop them. His message is, it's really difficult to learn how to swim by reading about it. And so Abdul's going to shout out a little bit about another program we've got going, but this one brings 3 of my favorite things together. So one is theory, so Tuckman and others, and the power of story. And the story that I will talk a lot about in future is Team Canada 72. This is a group of hockey players that came together to represent Canada and played this series against the Russian elite hockey players as well. And they eventually, at the end of this 8-game story, that was an incredible story, an incredible journey, were recognized as Canada's team of the century. So there's many lessons that we can learn from them. But as we go through that, the key things they talk about are come ready to play, to make sure that you're ready to come into this adventure as individuals to come into the team. But how do you go from individuals from many to one? And there's some real key lessons to do, and that's that storing part. When we get to norming, we have to find our purpose, understand why we're there. The norming, when we get to go through the performing, there's always going to be adversity. There's always going to be challenges. How do we overcome those? How do we develop a can-do attitude to be able to get there? And then the last part, how do we make sure that we play to win? So rather than being team chaos, make sure you're following the Team Canada 1972 model, and in that particular, your team here in 2021. And this is the model that we make use of with our team in Niagara Summer Games. Last 2 points I want to raise on here. One, great book that's out there about focusing on the dysfunctions of a team. I always like to talk about it more in the positive sense, but it really does within this story, telling, that Patrick Bassoni talks about it from a Catherine's journey as she goes through this role as a leader. The big one, I want to focus on this one, it really gets into the absence of trust. And that's a really powerful place to recognize and understand, because with trust, all things are possible. And we've been in environments where trust is broken. So for example, McDonald's knows if you show up at their window and they mess up your order, it'll take 7 times coming back. If you come back, it'll take 7 times just to get to neutral. And that's the problem. We break trust. It's a long way back. So the role of the leader, and it's the key message here, is you need to be vulnerable. And how do we be vulnerable a little bit? Well, when I do my seminar on the leadership challenge, I always talk about leaders going first. So here's an old slide that comes up again. Pete Drucker that comes in here. Thanks, Pop, but today's kids don't want money. They want leadership. And that's what a team will want as well. But it's leadership from everybody on the team. So make sure, as the first point says, we've got talented people. Make sure that we understand that leadership is a responsibility. It's not a rank. So we're a trusted teammate anytime we're involved in those. You have to make sure that you define and communicate a clear vision. Drucker talks about trumpeting it. So back to our key point again, make sure that you're continually bringing that vision out forward as we go forward. Here's a key one. Don't blame others when things go wrong. Things will go wrong. Don't blame others. Let me quickly tell you the 3 envelope story if you haven't heard it before. So one individual was leaving his job and gave 3 envelopes to his successor and said, the first time a crisis happens, open the first envelope, second crisis, second envelope, and so on. So a crisis happened, he opened the first envelope, and the first envelope said, blame your successor. So he had said, oh, it was my previous person, it was all his fault. Then the second crisis came along and opened it up, and it said, what do you do? Well, blame others around you, your teammates, people in your organization. He did, and he survived it. Then the third crisis came along, opened it up, and what it said, prepare 3 envelopes. So I always tease my colleagues and things, make sure you never open the first envelope, right? And you'll see it in all the time. You'll know our political leaders, whoever, you say they've opened the first envelope, they've opened the second envelope as we go through that. The buck stops with you. If there's a problem, it's your problem, own it and move forward. So that, the second last point is keep your integrity, earn the trust of others. And how do you earn the trust of others? By doing what you say you will do. So if you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it. And trust will come as a result of that. So the last point is don't be clever, be consistent. Be that individual that they can count on, and then you will develop trust. And that's a key ingredient and helps. From trust, all things are possible, and the dysfunctions of the teams will move in a good direction. So there's a quick summary and a whole bunch of ideas on the power of teamwork. Hopefully you found 1 or 2 or 3 things that resonate with you. And again, this is supposed to be a stimulating conversation. Hopefully we achieve that. And the idea is to stimulate you to go out and find and develop your skill set in 3 different ways. So Abdul, fast, and again, the last quote, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, determined people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So, Abdul, quick run, fast and furious, tag, you're it again.
Thanks, Barry. Fantastic topic and lots of very interesting stories in there, absolutely. So a few questions that have come in, so I'll look to my other screen and I will put some of these to you. So thank you, by the way, for all of you who have put your questions forward. Much appreciated that. Okay, here's the first one. What would your advice be on dealing with change in the workplace? And can you speak to how you have done it with changing the Canada Summer Games from 2021 to Canada Summer Games 2022?
Yes, change is with us all the time, for sure. Key thing for me is to make sure that everybody is very similar to that vision. If you've got the powerful vision that you can work upon and keep hanging on to that, as things change, then you can adapt and just be able to move forward on that. So what we did with the 2022 team now is we had to obviously put a little pause. We put a pause on where we were at, and we sat down and reimagined the way we needed to go. So we hung on to the key things. You'll find if anybody who does a strategic planning exercise and you'll go through the mission, vision, and values, we made sure that those were the anchors for us as we move forward. One of our key values is collaborating, so we brought all the people together that we could, so from volunteers and staff together to chart our way forward. So it was a a little bit of an etch-a-sketch moment where we turned up and we had to shake around and start. But we did it in a positive way, thinking that how might we reimagine the world and bring the creativity and bring everybody's lines of sight in. And that's where you truly need to do that with the change. So you need to get everybody together and then map your way forward. I think that's the key thing as we start off.
Awesome, great. Obviously, COVID is a common trend, and assuming a post-COVID work environment with obviously vaccines and that the light at the end of the tunnel getting brighter ever so with every dose is going in, will be a combination of bricks and mortars and remote meetings being the norm. What are some of the implications for team collaboration?
Yeah, it's been very interesting for us. We were blessed to be able to have a good platform for us to be able to go and meet, if you will, face to face, and an opportunity for examples like these business breathers. You can be all over the world and sitting down and sharing and having conversation. So there's a lot of advantages to, now that we've had this, if you will, this more mobile approach to teamwork. There is a lot to be said, though, to be able to come face to face. I think the part that I've really missed with some of it not being face to face, it's the bumping in pre and post meetings to have a little bit of chance to talk a little bit about camaraderie. I've often found there's always a chance to, one-on-ones. The old adage of management by walking around, where you can get a whole bunch of different things done just by talking to people's desks and things. So I think this mobile aspect is not going away. I think we're doing along that. So we're going to have to have these blended sessions, I think is where the future going to be. Kind of the first question and the second question both have this other answer in there. We need, as leaders and teammates, to make sure that we're flexible and continually to have a sense of humor as we move forward. Into this dark world a little bit, we have to make sure that we're always shedding a little light. So try and find the joy and the fun that will be in there, whether it's face-to-face or continually be on a Zoom call.
Yeah, that's definitely the new part of the trend and the norm, as it seems to be. Are there any good resources that you can point to help and develop your leadership style, or to help train staff about leadership?
Okay, well, I would say Abdul and Cassie have great programs that focus specifically on leadership, so check them out. There's a lot of them. I think I teach a fourth-year leadership course in the Goodman School of Business, and we spend a lot of time on readings and things like that, a lot of experiential learning, as you can appreciate. The one book that I truly like and our students always read, and I draw from a lot when I go out and give presentations on the Leadership Challenge, is a book by Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner, and it is called The Leadership Challenge. So it's a great resource that to pick up, to read through. It's got 5 fundamental practices, and I refer to them almost daily in my leadership journey.
Excellent, yeah. And I promise we didn't plant this question. It was a genuine question that came, and I have had the pleasure of reading that book, actually. So it's I would highly recommend it too. Here's another question that just came through. What advice would you give to someone who has recently joined a team of people that have worked together for a long time? How can they get connected and build relationship in a new team?
Yeah, the really difficult challenge, right? To be able to understand what's going on. So there'll be so many inside stories and inside jokes that you feel apart from that team rather than a part of that team. And that's a really difficult, because now, as I highlighted in that conversation on those stages of development, the team really needs to go back to that forming stage a little bit and get into the storming aspect. So how, as an individual, if they don't do that, then you're going to be still in that storming stage, and you've got to find how can you move from the storming from an individual to the performing. And it's going to be a lot on the communication aspect. You're going to have to do a little bit of one-on-ones to try and get up to speed on a few things. I always use a little technique called FORM, and it's called family, occupation, recreation, and message. And so when you have a conversation with an individual, ask them a little bit about, from a family perspective, ask them a little bit about something to do that, the work world, ask them about a recreation, and by doing that, you will find somewhere along the lines there will be a connection for you, and you will connect with them. And through that connection, if you will, that the message now comes in, and that's how you'll be connected. Because and through that, you will find that you will now move from a little bit of that storming to a little bit of that norming. Because let's say, oh, that Barry, he's an okay guy. We can trust him. He likes sports. Oh, he likes to go to art galleries. He likes to go for walks and runs or whatever along that line. You'll find a way you're connected, and through that connection, it'll help you through that storming phase to get into that more norming and help you to the performing.
Perfect. Thank you. So the last one here coming in is, what may be some traits of a good team player? And although there may be many, what may be some of the key, 3 key takeaways in becoming a good team player?
Yeah, it's a good. I'll go back a little bit with my Team Canada 1972 aspect. I think you have to recognize what your strengths are. All right. So the adage that I drew from the team is "come ready to play." So when you're on the team, make sure that anytime you come to a meeting, you've done your homework. You understand what it's all about. If you're seen as an expert in an area, make sure that you bring that expertise with that. So that's the first thing, come ready to play. The second part then as a teammate is allow your other teammates to be able to do the same thing. Come ready to play, right? So play to their strengths as well. I'm an Edmonton Oilers fan, so in hockey, if I have the puck and Connor McDavid's on the ice, I think he probably is going to be a little better for the puck. So I'm going to be passing the puck to Connor McDavid. And then I'm going to get somewhere it's open because Connor's going to give it back to me. And if I have a great opportunity to score, I'm going to do that, right? So you got to make sure you come ready to play, and then you allow others to make sure that they can play as well. The last one that I'll talk about is a key, and that comes to a little bit of that can do. When you get into times of challenging and things are going out there, make sure you're the teammate that picks people up. You're not the teammate that brings people down. So if somebody needs a boost, you're going to be there. You're going to be there with an idea, with a support, a hand, whatever you need to be. So I think those 3 things, again, come ready to play. Make sure you're ready to do the things you are. Listen, allow others to be able to get out there and play, and then make sure you're there to help when times get tough with that can-do help.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Barry. Thank you very much for taking the time, for being here, for preparing this wonderful content that's highly relevant and highly interactive as well. And also, thank you very much for all the audience who have taken the time out to join us today and be part of this session of Business Breeders. Goodman Group, as you know, is a community-focused learning and development services provider that works to support professionals, businesses, and entrepreneurs pursuing growth through professional development, certificate programs, executive education, consulting services, and startup support. I am pleased to share with you that the Goodman Group has launched a new program in this very area, Teamwork. And we're calling this Teamwork with Lessons from the Summit. The sessions of this program are led by our very own Dr. Barry Wright, from whom you had the opportunity to learn from today and hear from on the topics. This program will delve deep into the practical aspects of teamwork, and the session include opportunity to practice your teaming craft in the safety of a computer simulation, while you have the opportunity to receive one-on-one coaching as you work through and hone your teamwork skills. The program is offered between the 7th and 11th of June from noon to 1:30. So it's a series of 5 90-minute sessions. And to take advantage of the 15% off for early bird, register for the virtual seats this week. And of course, if you have a team of individuals that are interested, or if you're a Brock or a Goodman alum, please contact the team at prodev@brocku.ca for further information and to take advantage of additional savings that are available. So that session, that program will build on the elements and will enhance the elements that were covered today. So if you like today's session, you will likely very much enjoy the next one that will come up. Okay, well, that is all the time that we have for today's session of Business Breeders. Thank you all for tuning in. Joining me next week is Peter McTominay, and he will be speaking on the wine business bounce back and how wineries are using COVID to accelerate positive change. So that is the next time that we're together on April 20th at Goodman and wine business bounce back and how wineries are using COVID to accelerate positive change. I hope you can join me next time. Until then, stay safe.